Welcome back to episode 8 in our series of strange things found in ancient prayer book. Today's episode is about a strange phenomenon in the Quran, which, when overlaid with mathematics, shows that the Quran had a miraculous origin. Don't believe me? Let's check it out and dive straight in. Probability. We've all heard the term and probably use it every day, pun intended. But you have to actually stop to think about what it actually means. I mean, from a mathematical perspective. In maths, it means how likely something will occur, or how likely that proposition is true. Now, looking into how likely something can be true can be quite scary. Watch any Hollywood movie and you realise that the stunt the actor just pulled probably isn't possible. Apply it into a Bollywood movie and it's definitely not possible. But this is what you need to understand. If you have one question with two choices, you can only be right 50% of the time by guessing. With two questions, you now have 3 ways to be wrong, but only 1 way to be right on both questions. That is, right only 25% of the time. This is because you can't be right and wrong and right, or wrong and wrong. But to be right, you have to be right and right. With 3 questions each with 2 choices, you can only be right 1 time in 8. That is 13% of the time. Likewise, if there are 4 questions and you are guessing between 2 choices, you can only be right 1 time in 100, or 1% of the time. Applying probability to most religious scriptures is a scary task. Some of the stories are so far-fetched and inaccurate that you're left wondering, did that actually happen? But we are going to apply it here to the Quran, and let's see what we find out. The Quran is statistically correct. Let me explain. If the Quran is assumed to be making good guesses, it has millions of ways to be wrong, but only a limited number of ways to be right. If these things had been guessed, then the Quran would be wrong in some cases and right in others. But in each case, the Quran is always correct. I'll give 3 examples from the Quran which demonstrate this point. Chapter 16, verses 68 to 69. And consider thy sustainer has inspired the bee. Prepare for thyself dwellings in mountains and in trees, and in what men may build for thee by way of hives. And then eat all manner of the fruits, and follow humbly paths ordained by thee, thy sustainer. There issues from within these a fluid of many hues, wherein there is health for man. In all this, behold, there is a message indeed for people who think. The Quran talks about the bee, which leaves the hive to gather food, and says that this bee is female. We know this because the words used for eat, the paths, and from within the bees are all grammatically feminine. The author of the Quran could have used the masculine version of the word itself, which is actually what people thought, and in that male bees leave the hive for the food. Even Shakespeare thought that in one of his plays. But it's just not true. Identifying if a bee is male or female is actually tricky, and only recently have we learnt that the bee is in fact female. The male bee never leaves to go to get food, so the Quran is correct. Lucky guess? Well, that was a 50% chance to be right, so let's move on. Chapter 21, verse 33. It is he who has created the night and the day and the sun and the moon, all of them floating, orbiting through space. Here the Quran talks about the sun floating through space and moving, 2 things that were not known. If you look at the sun, you can't really tell if it's moving or stationary. Modern scientific methods allow us to confirm that the sun does have an orbit and is rotating. But at the time the Quran was revealed, there was no way of knowing this. Again, the Quran is correct, and to be right on both times, the author of the Quran only had a 25% chance of being right. Another lucky guess? Let's move on. In the first video, we learnt that the Quran says in chapter 51, verse 47, and it is we who have constructed with might, the heaven with might, and verily it is we who are steadily expanding it. Again, at the time, there was no way of knowing that the universe was expanding. But the Quran stated it. Let's assume that there were only two options again, that it was either expanding or static. Once again, the Quran is correct, and looking at all three of the previous examples that I've used and combining those together, there were 7 ways to be wrong, but only 1 way to be right. That's only a 13% chance of being right. These are just 3 examples of things that we didn't know. Imagine all of the other examples in the Quran, in which case the Quran is always right and never wrong. Combining these gives a probability of way less than 1%. In terms of mathematical probability, the Quran is miraculous. It's just one of many, many miracles in the Quran, and I'll be covering different types of miracles over this 30-day period. I would love to share them with you all, so please subscribe to the YouTube channel, and if you're watching this on WhatsApp, all you need to do is click on the link in the message and that will open up YouTube. You can subscribe from there. Finally, please share this video. It's the best way to help us out. We want it to go out to as many people as possible. Thanks once again for watching another episode. We'll be back tomorrow with another great miracle of the Quran.